Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Luxury Living Podcast. In Texas at the moment, it's about 100 degrees. And I think we've got to the point where we're ahead of the 100 degrees for 100 days by starting early in June. And I know, Keith, you're in Texas as well. So we normally try and save this off for August, but here we are pre-summer break for most of us, and it's already got hot. So that brings us to mind to the thing that we fuss about, which is how much is it costing us all this electricity in the peak hours? So we thought it'd be a good chance to talk about today about eco and eco-friendly and how you can better manage power. And we're joined by Blair Piersall from Savant, who by the end of this call is going to show you how you can do all of this stuff and have the government pay for it. So that's the secret to hold on. That may be the slight exaggeration, but we'll be more accurate as we get in. But I don't know, Keith, whether it's just as hot for you as it is for me.
It feels nice inside, but yeah, I think it's pretty hot here.
So Blair, where are we talking to you from?
So I'm in Boston right now, and summer hit just today. We've actually had a lovely spring so far, but it's pretty hot today as well.
So that, and probably humid if I remember living in
It's unspeakably humid right now. So there is that.
Okay, so we're going to talk about Savant Power, but in bigger breadth, we're going to talk about, building a home for energy efficiency. Is that the right way to think about this subject?
I think it's a few things. I like to think about it as building a home around the concept of energy efficiency, but also energy resiliency. We see, folks being interested in this idea of a more efficient platform for their home, and being cost conscious, as it relates to power consumption and other things like that. But I also see resilience coming up regularly. We see this idea of rolling blackouts that occur, instability with the grid, and the ability to have your home sort of islanded from that experience is a big benefit of leaning into this power story.
So Blair, I think you've actually done this in your home recently. Can you kind of give us an idea of, one, why you chose to kind of update your home with a lot of the Savant Power technology, but also the benefits you're getting from it?
Yeah, and our story, my wife and I, our story is about 6 years old, and I'll spare you 6 years of the entire story. But we put roof-mounted solar on our home about 6 years ago, and we just felt it was the right thing to do. We're particularly interested in having an energy-efficient space, the cost savings, all of that type of stuff. We quickly learned after doing that once you have roof-mounted solar on your home, if you lose power for some reason, that solar array is shut off. And it's done for a very good reason. It's to protect the utility workers who may be working on the grid outside on the street or something like that. And once the technology to put local power storage into our residence really got to a maturity point, we thought it made a ton of sense to add that experience as part of our installation. And so we currently have a solution in our home that allows our entire 200 amp service to seamlessly move on and off the grid. So it's a pretty awesome experience, and we have flexible load management attached to that allows us to really control in an off-grid scenario how much battery we're consuming or not consuming at a given time. So it's been a really awesome experience.
So let's break this down into its parts, because I think, to me, maybe I've got this wrong. There seem to be 4 parts to like a total solution if you were to build a total solution. There are smart breakers, and we should talk about smart breakers. And then there's how you integrate solar, battery, and even a generator into that collective picture. Is that the right way of thinking about it?
It absolutely is. The whole journey can begin with this idea of taking your electrical panel and making it intelligent. And doing that, Savant makes a smart companion module that installs in a traditional enclosure that allows you to monitor the energy consumption of the circuit connected to it and turn that circuit on and off remotely, which it's hard to believe, but that is the most significant technology upgrade to an electrical panel. It's like kind of since it was made, which is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And then the other piece of this, and this will get a little nerdy, Nigel, so sorry about that, but is this idea of what we call a hybrid inverter. And this is essentially a traffic cop for all of the energy in the home. So it's taking solar energy as a source, it's taking grid energy as a source, battery energy as a source, and it's applying it into the home in a thoughtful way based on consumption, based on grid status, whether the grid is up or the grid is down, and the needs and demands of the homeowner. So it's a super intelligent platform for that application.
So, Blair, you mentioned something that I want to circle back to just for a second. You mentioned the flexible load management, and maybe you can help me understand that. My understanding now is that if I were to want to have a generator or solar in a traditional system, I would have to choose ahead of time what I wanted on that system. Is that correct?
Yeah, so if we'll talk about a generator because I think it's an application people understand, and we can expand that out to a partial home battery solution. Most generators that get installed in residential applications aren't sized to power the entire residence. It's just, it's cost prohibitive, it's very noisy, all the things we know about generators. And so the super low tech solution to this, since generators were brought into the space, is a critical load panel where a fixed group of circuits in the home are powered up by that generator in an off-grid scenario. And it's a very deflating experience for folks who get a generator in their home. The first time the power goes out, it's like, who made these decisions? Why are these things getting power and other things aren't? Flexible load management, very simply, in its most basic form, allows for the homeowner to choose where that power goes in an off-grid scenario. And that is, I think, one of the biggest benefits to this installation for folks, whether they have a generator or they're leveraging solar and battery as a partial home backup solution as well.
And I guess it will disappoint some people. Those critical loads aren't the TV and the Xbox. I'm guessing they're the air conditioning system and your fridge. That's what we mean by critical here, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and we actually have an ability to set up these energy scenes that take effect in an off-grid scenario that can happen automatically or at the push of a button with the client to say, hey, I'm in a power outage scenario and I've got a group of loads that are on, but boy, it would be awesome to do laundry right now. And we can shed some loads in the house, fire up the laundry room, do some laundry. Or
now, these smart breakers sound very expensive. They're actually not that expensive. Setting up that side of it is not as cost prohibitive, is it? So how sort of expensive is it? And can it be done to an existing home?
Yeah, those are all awesome questions. Because the platform is designed to snap into existing and standard electrical panels, this is an application that can be installed retrofit, like it was in my home. My home was built in the 40s. Or can be part of a brand new installation. It's sort of client choice at that point. And to your point, they're not that expensive at all. A 200 amp panel worth of these modules, think about like 30 circuits controlled and monitored, is around $3,500. It's not a huge expense when you think about what you're getting, and it's a slick infrastructure investment. Which makes the home, as I like to say, battery or generator ready for a client that's thinking about leaning into an energy independent strategy.
Well, in going towards that generator in the future scenario you just mentioned, it is really interesting that in kind of that traditional model, you would have to make decisions for what you would want as a critical load on a system that you don't even own yet. And I love the idea of, to me, it's such a simple idea, but just being able to decide as you need it where that energy goes instead of making decisions about something you've never experienced.
And having this idea of, I have 12 or 14 loads that I have to decide today, to your point, Keith, are the most important things in my house. It does present a challenge to a lot of homeowners.
So I've got my smart panel. I've got all that done. And I can tell you that talking to clients, one of the things that happens next is they say, we're interested in solar, we're interested in battery generators. Which do we pick? there's so much choice, particularly in solar. It can be a little bit of a dubious profession installing solar, and batteries, you know, how are you guys helping with people making some of those decisions?
Yeah, those are great questions. We've all because of the proliferation of these technologies in the home, everybody has had their door banged on by somebody who's selling solar in the neighborhood. I mean, I have panels visible on my house and they still bang on my door trying to sell me solar panels. So I'm with you there. Um, there's a few things that we can do to assist with that. We have on staff a group of folks that are very well versed in the renewable space and the battery energy storage space, so we can actually help design and engineer a solution for a home. We can size these from a simple 200 amp service like mine up to an 800 amp, or these three-phase monster homes that we sometimes get for a design, which is pretty cool. And we can also assist with making recommendations for how much solar should be installed on the home to optimize that system. And in some cases and in some markets, we have friendly solar folks that we can connect everyone with who do high quality work and aren't the fly by night kind of folks that are just trying to sling panels.
So you mentioned one thing, energy resiliency. And I think we probably always think of this from an ROI perspective. I'm assuming that energy resiliency is one of the ROIs. Maybe it's not just a financial return, but can you kind of flesh that out and help me understand how that benefits a homeowner?
Yeah, there's a few things. I think that as we start to put an increased demand on the grid in the United States and have been for many years, it's important to reflect on the fact that the United States has the oldest electrical grid in the world. And it really wasn't designed for the types of demands that are being put on it. And we see this in the news all the time. I'm not going to, tell all the scary stories about any of that. Everybody's heard it. And I think it's this idea of approaching energy resiliency as an individual homeowner is a way and a method towards modernizing the grid in the United States that is very important and something that you're seeing being mandated with new construction in some areas and other spaces, but is a key ROI for an end user. It's not measurable in terms of like raw dollars. It's more measurable in terms of peace of mind. When the power goes out, when there's a surge, when there's frequency instability with the grid that's feeding a home, to know that your home can move itself off grid and protect itself, the valuable electrical components that you have inside of your home, and keep your family comfortable. It's kind of unmeasurable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is the promise of being able to sell unused capacity back to the local supplier a fact or fiction in your experience? I know we all have this dream that my solar is going to generate, gigawatts of power that I don't need, so I'm going to sell those back at X dollars, but whatever it is. Is that really happening anywhere?
It is. It absolutely is. Net metering is what that's called. And net metering is the ability, very simply, Nigel, for your electrical meter to spin backwards. Like, we'll look at it that way.
I would like that. I'd be grateful.
So there you
for
go.
that.
And so a well-designed solar array, and this is where picking your solar contractor is very important. You want to design a solar array to account for the needs and the demands of the home today and tomorrow. You don't want to undersize solar for sure. And so that presents a possibility where you can offset the actual consumption of the home and put some back on the grid. Everyone's mileage varies with this. And I'll speak from personal experience in our own home. We put a lot of power back on the grid before we had batteries installed. But in the state where we live, I am given a credit by the electrical company that doesn't match the retail rate that I pay for power. Okay, I get a credit that's a discounted rate. So when it came to the battery discussion, using my excess solar power to charge up a battery and use it later on in the day is a much better value proposition for me than not. So that is what you see. But there is a very real scenario where homeowners can put power back on the grid and see a return for that.
And one of the obvious places that to me is charging EVs, electric cars,
Yeah.
because if you're a Tesla owner or something else, then at some point at nighttime you're going to charge it. You might as well charge it out of a battery you've charged from the sun, rather than, even though it may be cheaper at nighttime. Do you support Tesla batteries? What is your thought on batteries as a team?
So our thought on batteries is all of these solutions aren't created equal, and being who we all are, we understand that. It's not everyone's entertainment solution is equal or anything else like that.
Right.
Most of the batteries that are being discussed in the market today are what I would call a partial home battery solution. The inverter in that solution has a very limited capability in terms of how much power it can provide to the home. And so it's designed to provide power to a certain number of loads inside of the house. And I don't want to say that that is a terrible solution, because for a very large portion of the American public, that is so cool and awesome and something that everybody should look at and consider. But I think as homeowners, we should think about what our goals and aspirations are as we look at a solution like this. And because of where I work and my knowledge in the space, there was nothing that was going to meet the needs of my wife and I as we looked at this, except for a whole home battery solution, a solution that could actually take the entire residence and seamlessly transition it to off-grid power. And that's exactly what happens. We were watching television the other night, and this is a shameless plug for the TV show Silo. We're watching it on Apple. It's awesome. It's really good. And we had there was a storm going on at the time, and we had a power outage in the neighborhood. We didn't even notice that it happened. We were still watching the TV show, streaming it off of the internet. And the only way we knew that we had a power outage is we both got a notification in our app telling us that there had been a power outage. And 40 minutes later, the power turned back on, and all was good. And that sounds very silly. It's like, geez, Blair, you weren't interrupted by TV, or your TV wasn't interrupted by this. But I think homeowner expectation should be at that level for this type of resilient solution. So I bring that up as an example because it's fun and it's cool, but it's also, what we should expect as we look at things like this.
It makes a pretty clear case for the value, especially of that resiliency you mentioned. But I guess now we could talk a little bit about the cost. Nigel teased some tax incentives. Can you kind of explain how that works and how Savant takes advantage of that?
Absolutely. So last year in 2022, a piece of legislation was passed called the Inflation Reduction Act. And I will spare you a bunch of detail about it, other than it was in total, as a piece of legislation, about $900 billion of spending earmarked across a variety of different things. What's germane to our discussion is this idea that there's $500 billion of spending set aside inside of the Inflation Reduction Act towards clean energy. And almost $400 billion of that is targeted at homeowners and businesses making infrastructure updates to their spaces towards energy efficiency and energy resiliency. And the primary portion of this, and we'll pop up a cool graphic so everybody can sort of see this, is there's a tax credit that is available for homeowners who are looking at deploying solar or battery energy storage systems in their home. And this is a 30% federal tax credit. So while I'm not a tax professional, I do know that a tax credit versus a tax deduction is way better. This is a very good thing. And so if you have any kind of tax burden at all as an American consumer, you can basically get 30% of your costs of one of these solutions back when you do your taxes in the next year. This includes the equipment itself, so the solar panels, the battery energy storage system, all of that fun stuff, plus any balance of system electrical. I sort of think of that as the doodads needed to make the install happen, and any labor that you were charged as part of that.
Now, as you said, none of us here are accountants, lawyers, or tax experts. So refer to your professional. We're a home automation bunch of people. So we should. I know you said that, but it's worth repeating before my legal department calls us. How long do they have to get this benefit? Can they wait 3 years or?
This is one of the coolest aspects to this piece of legislation. It's running until 2032. So from 2022 until 2032, it's a 10-year program. There's no sort of reduction in the tax credit. It is 30% until 2032. And what I think is very cool about this is a client has the ability to phase these solutions in if it's something that they choose to do. So somebody could deploy solar in 2023, wait a few years and deploy batteries in 2026. And be able to take that 30% tax credit on both of those things when they deploy them and have them commissioned. It is also interesting to note that inside of the piece of legislation, the 30% tax credit is eligible for standalone battery systems that are not charged with renewable energy. So if you have a client who is just interested in that energy resilience story that we've been talking about, but doesn't really have the ability to put solar on their home or a home that's really good for solar, and we certainly see that occasionally, they can apply for that tax credit by installing that standalone battery solution.
It sounds like there's something for just about any one of our clients to take advantage of there. It almost doesn't matter what you're trying to do. There's a solution there.
There awesome. Absolutely is. And the tax credit portion of this, which I think is so cool, there's no cap on system size. There's no cap on income or anything else like that. We see luxury-oriented solutions that are very expensive that are eligible for this tax credit, and more modest solutions that are as well. This piece of legislation also has tax credits and rebates for other infrastructure investments in your home, updating your electrical panels, updating your electrical wiring, putting in high efficiency heat pumps and other things like that. So it is worthwhile to check all of these things out, see if this applies in your particular situation. It is very rare that this much money is put into these types of infrastructure investments for the American homeowner. And I think that is sort of one of the unsung heroes of this piece of legislation, and something that was not broadcast as strongly as it should have been at the time that this was introduced.
Now, you don't offer tax consulting services, but one of the services I do know you offer is that if you're going to do one of these things, there are often permits and there are often technical drawings and design. I mean, we're playing with real voltage and ampage here. So you guys actually, they can work through Bravas to access this. You guys offer a really good service, don't you, to help this really get spade ready, is the phrase they used to use.
Absolutely. So, and it's a great point, Nigel. All of these systems need to be permitted by the local AHJ or the folks that have jurisdiction in that area. And you do need to do, if you're attaching it to the grid, you need to have a interconnection approval with the local utility. We provide a service where we will get stamped engineered submittal packages for both of those things. So you can have a stamped engineering package that can be given to the folks that are doing the installation to pull permits and make sure that everything's on the up and up and meeting code the way that it should. And we'll also interface with the local utility to get interconnection approval, which is levels of bureaucracy none of us want to deal with. So trust me when I tell you, you want somebody else to do that for you. It's not fun.
Well, I think this is a really important area. I mean, we've all discussed at other times in other places that, energy efficiency and resiliency are not things that are going to become less important. They're going to things that are going to become more important. And, in bigger and more luxurious homes, there are a lot of systems that need a lot of management, use a lot of power, and everything you could do to be more effective and efficient in that is producers. And I'm just pleased that the US government's going to help at least with a credit to our taxes to encourage that. So Blair, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. And, we'll hopefully find a few more clients out of this who want some resiliency and redundancy.
I hope so. We love talking to folks about this, and I love talking to folks about this. I'm definitely more skilled in talking about the parts and pieces and the applications than I am in tax code and all that fun stuff. So we're always happy to help, and I appreciate the opportunity to just help educate you and your team on this. This is awesome.
It's great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Blair.